When my daughter looked me in the eyes and told me I needed to leave the home I'd paid for, I collapsed right there on our kitchen floor. 3 days later, I was sleeping in my car outside the courthouse. That's when I realized family ties are just fancy ropes people use to hang you with. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a roller coaster built by someone who hates straight lines. I always thought Melissa and I were close. I raised her alone after her father died when she was 12. Every recital, every graduation, every heartbreak, I was there, holding her hand or picking up the pieces. When she suggested I sell my house and move in with her and her husband, Brad, it seemed perfect. I was getting older, the big house was too much to maintain, and I could help with their new baby, my precious grandson Liam. Mom, it just makes sense, she said, those big brown eyes so sincere. You'll save on expenses, we'll have built-in childcare, and the money from your house can go toward your retirement. It sounded reasonable. So I sold my home of 30 years, the one her father and I had purchased when we were newlyweds. I gave Melissa and Brad $200,000 toward their mortgage and moved into their guest suite. The first year was blissful. I adored spending days with little Liam, teaching him to say Nana and watching his first wobbly steps. Melissa seemed grateful for my help, and Brad was always polite, if somewhat distant. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The whispered arguments that stopped when I entered a room. The sudden interest in my finances. The way Brad started suggesting I treat myself to expensive trips. I didn't connect the dots until that rainy Tuesday night, exactly 14 months after I'd moved in. Melissa waited until Brad was home, then asked me to join them in the living room. Liam was already asleep. Mom, she said, her voice suddenly businesslike, we think it's time for you to find your own place. What? I felt like I'd been slapped. But we agreed. That was temporary, Brad cut in. We need our space back. You have 2 weeks, Melissa added, not meeting my eyes. We found some nice senior apartments across town. Script part separator, I stared at them both, my mind racing to catch up with what was happening. But I gave you $200,000, I said, my voice shaking. That was my retirement money. Melissa sighed like I was a difficult child. That was a gift, Mom. We never said it was rent for life. A gift. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We talked about me living here permanently. That's why I sold my house. Brad cleared his throat. There's nothing in writing, Margaret. And frankly, you're interfering with our family dynamic. Interfering? I'm family. My voice cracked. I take care of Liam while you both work. I cook dinner 4 nights a week. And we appreciate that, Melissa said flatly. But we need our privacy back. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone, who I'd put through college by working 2 jobs, who I'd nursed through mono and heartbreaks and anxiety attacks, and saw a stranger. Where am I supposed to go? I'm 68 years old. I can't just start over. Brad stood up. The senior living facility has units available starting next month. We'll help with the first 3 months' rent. 3 months. And then what? They exchanged glances. You have Social Security, Melissa said. And Medicare. I felt sick. Is this about the money? Do you need more? No, ma'am, Melissa snapped. It's about boundaries. You're constantly giving unsolicited advice about how we raise Liam, how we should manage our finances. Because you asked for my help. Well, now we're asking for space. That night, I couldn't sleep. I called my sister Claire in Florida, sobbing through the story. Margaret, she said after listening, did you get anything in writing when you gave them that money? I hadn't. It was my daughter. Why would I need a contract? The next morning, I found a real estate attorney who could see me immediately. His name was Robert Garrison, and his kind eyes crinkled with concern as I explained my situation. I'm sorry, Mrs. Winters, but without documentation stating the money was a loan or that you purchased equity in their home, legally it's considered a gift. Script part separator, I left that office feeling like the floor had fallen out from under me. How could Melissa do this? Where had I gone wrong as a mother? Back at the house, no, their house, I found Melissa in the kitchen. Liam was playing with blocks at her feet, his chubby hands stacking them precariously. I spoke to a lawyer, I said quietly. She didn't even look up from the vegetables she was chopping. That's unnecessary, Mom. He says I don't have legal standing to stay here. The words tasted bitter. Now she looked up, her expression almost relieved. Then it's settled. Settled. My voice rose. Nothing is settled. I raised you by myself. I worked 2 jobs so you could have dance lessons and college tuition. I held your hair back when you were sick and stayed up all night when your first boyfriend broke your heart. And this is how you repay me. By throwing me out like garbage. Liam started crying at my raised voice. Melissa immediately scooped him up, cradling him protectively as if I were the threat. See, this is exactly what I mean. You're creating drama. You're upsetting my son. My grandson, I corrected, my hands shaking. Our son, Brad said, suddenly appearing in the doorway. Our house. Our rules. That night, I sat alone in my room scrolling through apartment listings on my iPad. The senior communities they'd suggested were all over $2,000 a month. My Social Security check was $1,850. The math was brutal and simple. I'd given my daughter nearly everything I had. Now I was about to become homeless at 68 years old. As I clicked through dismal apartment photos, my phone lit up with a text from an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Winters, this is Janet Miller from Pearson and Winters Law. There's something about your late husband's estate you should know. Can you come in tomorrow at 10? Pearson and Winters? That was David's old firm. What could they possibly want after all these years? Script part separator, I couldn't sleep that night, wondering what Janet Miller could possibly want. David had been gone for 16 years. His estate had been settled long ago, or so I thought. The next morning, I drove to the gleaming downtown office building that housed Pearson and Winters. Janet Miller was a sharp-looking woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner. Mrs. Winters, thank you for coming in, she said, motioning to a chair. I was reviewing old files when I came across something concerning your husband's estate. She slid a folder across her desk. Inside was a document I'd never seen before. This is an amendment to David's will, executed 3 months before his death. Apparently, it was misfiled years ago and never properly processed. Scanned the document. My hand is trembling. He left the house in a trust, Janet explained. You had lifetime rights to live there, but the actual ownership transferred to a trust benefiting your grandson, or grandchildren, once they turned 25. If you sold the house before then, my heart stopped. Which I did. She nodded gravely. The proceeds should have gone into the trust. Not to your daughter or son-in-law. But I gave them $200,000 from that sale. Janet's expression hardened. That's problematic. As trustee, you had a fiduciary duty to preserve those assets. I didn't know about this trust. Nobody told me. Nevertheless, legally speaking, those funds belong in the trust for your grandson. Your daughter had no right to accept that money. My head was spinning. So what happens now? Janet closed the folder. As the law firm overseeing the trust, we have an obligation to recover those funds. I'll need to speak with your daughter immediately. I left the office clutching the trust documents, feeling both vindicated and terrified. Melissa had taken money that legally belonged to her own son. And now she'd have to give it back. All of it. When I pulled into their driveway, I saw Brad loading suitcases into his SUV. My 2 weeks weren't even up yet. Were they leaving? Taking Liam away before I could even say goodbye? Script part separator, Stormed into the house, fury overriding my usual caution. Brad nearly dropped the suitcase he was carrying when he saw my expression. Where is Melissa? I demanded. Packing for our weekend at the lake house, he said, eyeing me warily. What is going on? I waved the trust documents in his face. You need to call her out here. Now. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he shouted for Melissa without argument. She appeared moments later, Liam on her hip. Mom, what's? Did you know? Interrupted, my voice deadly cow. Did you know about your father's trust? Her face went blank, then pale. That was all the answer I needed. You knew, I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. You knew that money wasn't mine to give you. Brad stepped forward. What trust? What's she talking about, Mel? Melissa's eyes darted between us. Each is nothing. Mons confused again. I'm not confused, I said, handing the documents to Brad. The money I gave you from selling my house? It legally belongs to Liam. It was never mine to give, or yours to take. Brad skimmed the pages, his expression darkening with each paragraph. Melissa, what the hell is this? Dad's attorney mentioned something years ago, she admitted reluctantly. But I thought it was invalidated when Mom sold the house. You thought? Brad's voice rose. Or you hoped. Because these papers say we owe $200,000 to a trust for Liam that we can't touch for 23 more years. The look he gave my daughter made me shiver. It was the look of someone seeing their partner clearly for the first time, and not liking what they saw. You need to return that money, I said. All of it. By next week. Script part separator, Melissa's face contorted with anger. We can't just come up with $200,000. We used that money to pay off our credit cards and renovate the kitchen. Brad set down the papers, his jaw clenched. So you did know. You've known all along. I felt a twisted satisfaction watching their perfect facade crumble, but it was short-lived. This was still my daughter and grandson caught in this mess. That's not my problem, I said, channeling the business-like tone Melissa had used on me. The law firm will be contacting you tomorrow. They're obligated to recover those funds for Liam's trust. This is ridiculous. Melissa snapped, bouncing Liam nervously on her hip. You're just trying to punish us because we asked for our space back. I laughed bitterly. Punish you? You took money that wasn't mine to give, knowing it belonged to your own son, then threw me out when I became inconvenient. Tell me, Melissa, who's punishing whom? Brad was pacing now, running calculations in his head. We'd have to take out a second mortgage. Or sell the house, I suggested innocently. The color drained from Melissa's face. We can't sell. The market's down. We'd lose money. Not my problem, I repeated, her own words echoing back at her. Brad rounded on Melissa. Did you know about this when you suggested your mother sell her house and move in with us? The silence that followed was answer enough. Oh my God, he whispered. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? Melissa's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't like that. I just thought. What? Brad interrupted. That you'd get your mom's retirement money and then dump her in some cheap apartment when you were done? Script part separator, Liam began to cry, perhaps sensing the tension in the room. I felt a pang watching him, innocent in all of this. I need to sit down, I said, suddenly exhausted. Brad pointed to the living room. I think we all do. We moved like sleepwalkers to the couches. Melissa tried bouncing Liam to quiet him, but her movements were jerky with anxiety. There has to be some kind of solution, Brad said, running his hands through his hair. We can't just come up with that kind of money overnight. You had no problem spending it overnight, I pointed out. Melissa's eyes flashed. We didn't blow it on vacations, Mom. We invested in our home, for our family. For your family, I corrected. The one you decided doesn't include me anymore. Brad looked between us. How long? He asked Melissa. How long have you known about this trust? She bounced Liam more vigorously. Dad's attorney mentioned it at the funeral. But I thought. She swallowed. I thought it wouldn't matter if Mom never found out. The weight of her admission hung in the air. My own daughter had deliberately hidden my husband's wishes from me. So when you suggested I sell my house, I began. It wasn't just about the money, she insisted, tears forming. We did need help with Liam. I did want you here, at first. Until you had what you wanted, Brad muttered. I watched them, this couple unraveling before my eyes. A strange calm settled over me. The law firm will be contacting you tomorrow, I said again, standing up. I suggest you figure out your plan before then. Where are you going? Melissa asked, panic edging into her voice. To pack, I replied. You wanted me out, remember? 2 weeks, you said. But don't worry, I'll be gone by morning. Mom, wait. I turned at the doorway. One more thing. Janet Miller mentioned she'll need to notify the IRS about the misappropriation of trust funds. Apparently, there are tax implications. The color drained from Brad's face. Tax implications. I smiled thinly. Something about fraud penalties. She can explain it better than I can. Script part separator ===. I left them there, Brad looking shell-shocked and Melissa crying, Liam still fussing in her arms. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I heard their heated whispers escalate into full-blown arguing. Good, I thought savagely. Let them fight. I packed methodically, taking only what mattered: photo albums, David's watch, my jewelry. The furniture had been theirs from the beginning. I'd never truly had a place here. I'd just been too blind to see it. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Miller. Set up meeting with your daughter and son-in-law tomorrow, 2 p.m. Please attend. I responded with a simple yes and continued packing. By midnight, I had 3 suitcases lined up by the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, wondering where they sleep tomorrow. A hotel would drain what little cash I had left. Claire was too far away in Florida. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mom. Brad's voice, not Melissa's. I opened the door cautiously. He looked haggard, his eyes bloodshot. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped back to let him in. He glanced at my packed suitcases but didn't comment. Melissa's been lying to me, he said without preamble. Not just about the trust. About everything. I waited, not offering any lifelines. We're not going to the lake house this weekend, he continued, his voice hollow. I was taking Liam to my parents while Melissa went to meet someone. Someone. Her boss. She's been having an affair for months. The revelation should have shocked me, but somehow it fit the new version of my daughter I was discovering. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Brad leaned against the dresser. All those times she said she was working late. And I believed her because she was so convincing. Just like she convinced you to sell your house. She's always been persuasive, I said quietly. Even as a child. He met my eyes. I don't want you to leave like this. Not tonight. Not until we figure something out. Script part separator ===. What exactly are you figuring out? I asked, not ready to soften. You two made it clear I'm not welcome here. Brad ran his hands through his hair. Everything's different now. This trust situation. Melissa's affair. Nothing is what I thought. So I'm supposed to stay because now you need me? That's not. He stopped himself. You're right. We treated you terribly. I went along with Melissa's plans without questioning them. I'm sorry. His apology sounded genuine, but I'd learned the hard way not to trust easily. Where is she now? I asked. Downstairs, crying. Calling her boss/boyfriend. Brad's mouth twisted bitterly. She's trying to get him to loan us the money. I almost laughed at the absurdity. And does this man have $200,000 just lying around? Apparently he's married. To someone wealthy. Brad shook his head. The whole thing is a mess. We sat in heavy silence for a moment. The meeting tomorrow, he finally said. What should we expect? Janet Miller will outline the legal situation. The money needs to be returned to the trust. All of it. And if we can't pay, then they'll put a lien on your house. Maybe pursue criminal charges for misappropriation of trust funds. Brad looked stricken. Criminal charges? Could Melissa go to jail? I thought about my daughter, about the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Even now, after everything, the idea of her in handcuffs made my stomach turn. I don't know, I said honestly. This isn't about revenge, Brad. It's about what's legally Liam's. A cry from downstairs interrupted us, not Liam's, but Melissa's. A sound of pure anguish that made us both freeze. Something's wrong, Brad said, already moving toward the door. We rushed downstairs to find Melissa on the kitchen floor, phone clutched to her chest, sobbing hysterically. He said no, she choked out when she saw Brad. And he's telling his wife about us. Said he's done being blackmailed. Blackmailed? Brad and I exchanged alarmed glances. I never blackmailed him. Melissa wailed. I just asked for a loan. But the word hung in the air between us, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Who was this daughter of mine? What else had she done? Script part separator equals. Brad looked like a man watching his life burn down around him. You asked your married boss for $200,000? What did you think would happen? Melissa wiped her face, mascara smearing down her cheeks. I thought he loved me. He said he was leaving his wife. And you believed him. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. She glared at me through her tears. You don't understand. I was trying to fix this. Fix what, exactly? Brad demanded. The money you stole from your own son? The lies you've been telling me for months? Which part were you fixing? Liam's cries echoed from the baby monitor. No one moved to get him. I'll check on him, I said finally, needing distance from this train wreck. In Liam's room, I lifted my grandson from his crib, inhaling his sweet baby smell. It's okay, I whispered, rocking him gently. Nana's here. As I soothed him, my phone buzzed with a text. It was Janet Miller again, new information about trust. Call me immediately. With Liam still in my arms, I called her. Mrs. Winters, Janet said without preamble, I've discovered another document. The trust doesn't just cover the house proceeds. What do you mean? Your husband had a life insurance policy. $2 million. My knees weakened. $2 million. That's impossible. I received his policy payout after he died. That was his employer policy. This was a private one, with premiums paid from an account you apparently didn't know about. The room seemed to spin. Where is this money now? Janet's voice hardened. According to our records, the policy paid out to your daughter as contingent beneficiary when you failed to claim it. She signed documentation stating you were incapacitated. Incapacitated? I was never. Horror washed over me as pieces clicked into place. Mrs. Winters? Are you there? Those business trips Melissa took after David died, I whispered. She said she was helping settle his affairs. The signature on the waiver does appear to be yours, Janet continued. Though given these circumstances, we should investigate if it was forged. I looked down at Liam, innocent in all this mess. $2 million, I repeated. My daughter stole $2 million from her own son. Script part separator As sotto der holding Liam, the weight of Janet's revelation pressed down me like a stone. $2 million, money meant for my grandson, stolen through deception and forgery. What happens now? I asked Janet, my voice barely audible. We'll need to file fraud charges immediately, she replied. The statute of limitations hasn't expired. With your testimony, we can recover those funds. My daughter could go to prison. Yes, Mr. Winters. She could. I ended the call and stood in the nursery, gently swaying with Liam, who had fallen back asleep on my shoulder. Downstairs, I could still hear Brad and Melissa arguing, their voices rising and falling like a violent tide. When I descended the stairs with Liam, they both fell silent. Who were you talking to? Melissa asked, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. I carefully placed Liam in his playpen before facing them. Janet Miller just called. She found something else. What now? Brad groaned. I looked directly at my daughter, searching for any trace of the child I'd raised. $2 million in life insurance, Melissa. Your father's private policy. The color drained from her face. Mom. You forged my signature claiming I was incapacitated. You stole $2 million that should have gone into Liam's trust. Brad staggered backward as if physically struck. $2 million. Where is it? Melissa's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Where is the money, Melissa? I repeated, my voice steel. It's gone, she whispered finally. Gone. Brad exploded. How does $2 million just disappear? Bad investments, she said, her voice small. Real estate deals that fell through. A startup that went bankrupt. I felt strangely calm. Janet is filing fraud charges tomorrow morning. They can still recover whatever's left. Prison, Brad muttered. You're looking at prison time, Melissa. Script part separator, equals. She flinched. Mom, you can't let this happen. I'm your daughter. Her plea struck me as absurd after everything she'd done. You're my daughter who forged my signature, stole millions from her own son, and tried to throw me out on the street. I can fix this. She insisted, desperation bleeding into her voice. I just need time. Brad laughed bitterly. Time. The meeting with the law firm is tomorrow. The fraud charges will be filed after that. What exactly can you fix in 18 hours? Melissa grabbed her phone. I know people who can help. Investors who owe me favors. The delusion in her voice was frightening. I exchanged glances with Brad, who shook his head slightly. I'm going to put Liam back to bed, I said quietly. When I come back down, I expect the truth. All of it. Upstairs, as I tucked my grandson in for the second time that night, I felt tears flowing down my face. How had we come to this? My daughter, my only child, facing prison. My grandson's inheritance squandered. My phone buzzed with another text from Janet. Police detective wants to speak with you tomorrow before our meeting. Financial Crimes Unit has been monitoring several investments connected to Melissa. The walls were closing in faster than even I had anticipated. When I returned downstairs, Brad was sitting alone at the kitchen table, head in his hands. Where is she? I asked. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. Gone. She packed a bag and left. Did she say where? To fix things, he mimicked bitterly. Whatever that means. I sank into a chair across from him. Does she realize running makes everything worse? Brad pushed his phone toward me. Read her text. The message on the screen made my blood run cold. Tell mom I'm sorry. I'll make this right. Don't you look for me. Script part separator, equals. I stared at the message, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Running away, just like she'd done at 16 when she crashed my car, and again at 22 when she maxed out my credit cards. Only this time, she couldn't come back with tears and promises and make it all go away. The police arrived within the hour. Detective Morrow was a sharp-eyed woman who seemed unsurprised by the situation. Unfortunately, we see this kind of family financial fraud more often than you'd think, she said, reviewing the documents Janet had forwarded. We've been monitoring several investment schemes your daughter was involved in. This explains where the capital came from. Will you find her? Brad asked. Detective Morrow's expression was non-committal. We'll try. But if she's taken cash or has other identities established, it could take time. Other identities. I echoed, feeling sick. Her passport was scanned at Portland International 3 hours ago, the detective said. She boarded a flight to Vancouver. Brad looked stunned. Canada. But all her contacts, she mentioned, were in New York or California. False trails, Detective Morrow explained. Common tactic. I suddenly felt every one of my 68 years. So what happens now? We freeze her accounts, issue warrants, and work with Canadian authorities, she replied. In the meantime, I suggest you both prepare for tomorrow's meeting with the trust attorneys. After she left, Brad and I sat in silence, the magnitude of Melissa's betrayal settling over us like ash. I should have seen it, he finally said. The unexplained trips, the secretive phone calls. I thought she was just having an affair, not. He gestured helplessly. Running a financial crime ring? I supplied. How did she turn out this way? Brad whispered. What did we miss? I had no answers. Only a lifetime of memories that now seemed like scenes from a movie I'd misunderstood. The next morning, we arrived at Pearson & Winters together, Brad and I presenting a unified front. Janet Miller was waiting with 2 other attorneys and Detective Morrow. The meeting was clinical, devastating in its precision. The trust would be reconstituted with whatever funds could be recovered. The house, Brad and Melissa's house, would need to be sold to repay part of the debt. What about Liam? Brad asked, his voice hollow. The trust is for his benefit, Janet explained. But you'll remain his guardian, of course. And Melissa? I couldn't help asking. Detective Morrow cleared her throat. We just received word from Canadian authorities. They apprehended her trying to board a flight to Belize with false documentation and nearly $50,000 in cash. The room spun slightly. My daughter in handcuffs, being extradited to face charges. She'll be brought back to face multiple felony counts, the detective continued. Wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. The DA is preparing the case now. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching my daughter in an orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She didn't look at me as she pleaded guilty to reduced charges, 15 years instead of 30. A bargain, her lawyer called it. Brad and I left the courthouse together, Liam between us holding our hands. Will you stay? He asked quietly as we reached the parking lot. In the guest house behind the new place? Liam needs you. And honestly, so do I. I looked down at my grandson, who smiled up at me, blissfully unaware of the tragedy that had unfolded around him. Yes, I said finally. I'll stay. That night, as I tucked Liam into bed in our new much smaller home, he asked the question I'd been dreading. When is Mommy coming home? I smoothed his hair, choosing my words carefully. Not for a long time, sweetheart. But Daddy and Nana are here. We'll always be here. As I turned out his light, I realized something profound. Family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about who remains when the storms come, who helps rebuild from the rubble. My daughter had tried to discard me like an outdated appliance. Instead, she'd lost everything, her freedom, her family, her future. And I, the mother she'd betrayed, would be the one to help raise her son. Life's ironies can be both painful and perfect. I visit Melissa once a month at the Women's Correctional Facility. We sit across from each other at metal tables, strangers connected by blood and betrayal. She's thinner now, her designer clothes replaced by prison denim, her manicured hands now bare and chapped. At first, she wouldn't look at me, shame or anger keeping her eyes fixed on the table between us. But as months passed, something shifted. How's Liam? She always asks first. I show her pictures, his first day of kindergarten, soccer games, birthday parties. Her eyes drink in the images of the childhood she's missing, the son growing up without her. Does he ask about me? Every day, I tell her, because it's true. Children don't stop loving their parents, even when those parents have failed them catastrophically. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes she's bitter. Sometimes she speaks of the future with a desperate optimism that breaks my heart. She'll be eligible for parole in 8 years, when Liam is 13. Brad has moved on, as I knew he would. He's dating a kindergarten teacher now, a kind woman who treats Liam with genuine affection. I've made my peace with it. At least this one doesn't seem to be hiding criminal tendencies. The financial aftermath took years to unravel. Investigators eventually recovered about $600,000 of the missing millions, hidden in offshore accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, and investments under aliases. It all went into Liam's reconstructed trust, managed now by a court-appointed fiduciary. I live in a small guest house on Brad's new property. It's more than enough space for me, and I can watch Liam every day after school. In an ironic twist, I ended up exactly where Melissa had initially promised I'd be, living close to family, helping with my grandson, just not in the way any of us expected. Last month, during my prison visit, Melissa finally asked the question that had been hovering between us for years. Why do you still come see me, Mom? After everything I did. I considered all the possible answers: duty, forgiveness, love despite everything. But the truth was simpler. Because you're still my daughter, I said. And I'm still your mother. That doesn't change, even when everything else does. She reached across the table then, the first time she'd initiated contact since her sentencing, and squeezed my hand. No words, just that simple human connection. As I drove home that day, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. From homeowner to almost homeless to guardian once again. From betrayed to rebuilding. The house lights were on when I pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see Brad helping Liam with homework at the kitchen table. They looked up as my headlights swept across the room, and Liam came running out to meet me. Nana, I lost another tooth. I hugged him tight, this precious boy who had saved us all in different ways. Did you put it under your pillow? I asked, following him inside. Not yet. Dad says we have to wash it first. Brad met my eyes over Liam's head. Good visit? He asked quietly. Better, I nodded. She's finally talking about real things. Later, after Liam was asleep, I sat on my small porch watching the stars. At 68, I'd expected a quieter life, retirement, maybe some travel, Sunday dinners with family. Instead, I got betrayal, courtrooms, and a second chance at raising a child. But isn't that life? Not the carefully planned journey we imagine, but the one we navigate when those plans collapse. Not the family we thought we had, but the one we build from the wreckage. I had lost a daughter to greed and deception. But I'd gained something too, clarity, purpose, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Tomorrow, Liam would wake up excited about the tooth fairy. Brad would head to work after dropping him at school. And I would continue piecing together this unexpected life, grateful for second chances and the wisdom that only comes from surviving what you once thought would destroy you. That's the thing about being pushed out of your home. Sometimes you find your way to exactly where you're supposed to be.